Good evening. Welcome to Sexperts Bedtime Stories for Couples. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with the Sexperts brand. Also, become a Patreon Burst Babe member at our Patreon at patreon.com/sexperts. And I'll leave the details in the link below. Please like our story if you do, and you may share with anyone over 18 years of age. Thank you for listening to Sexperts Bedtime Stories for Couples. Finally, the plane took off after a 2.5-hour delay. He had drifted off into a deep sleep after indulging into the notes of his final business meeting. His first-class seat was reclined into a comfortable position, and the window shades had been lowered to dim the cabin. Through his partially closed eyes, he could see flight attendants moving around the forefront of the cabin as they brought drinks to fellow passengers. He wondered how long he'd been asleep since takeoff. He instantly gazed at his watch and noticed he'd been asleep for more than 1 hour. He was thirsty and needed to relieve himself. As he began to stir in his seat, a flight attendant noticed his movements and promptly came beside him to take his request. She was sexy and pretty. Her brown hair was pulled back into a bun with soft bangs that was almost touching her long lashes. Her eyes were dark brown with almost appearing black, as though she could see through him and read his thoughts. He hoped not. As she was speaking to him, he thought her pink gloss lips were incredibly suckable, and he could feel his dick bulge through his tailored pants. He shifted his weight in disguise, to disguise the obvious by her gaze at his crotch. He shook his head back and forth from the distraction of her lips and refocused on the drink order she repeatedly tried to get from him. He ordered brandy with a side of water and watched her walk away with an extra sway of her hips. Her black uniform was skin-tight and short, and she wore patent electric blue 4-inch pumps. He thought he saw lace as she reached into the overhead compartment for the belongings of another passenger while giving him a seductive glance towards his way. Damn, how much longer does he have to endure this shit, he thought. He was eager to get home and get fucked as soon as he hit the door. He hoped there wouldn't be any interference with meaningless conversation of work, the dog, and especially what friend did what to whom. All he wanted was lips and pussy on his dick and moaning in his ear. It's been 3 weeks since he'd even smelt pussy. Something's got to give, and he had a lot of giving to do. He arose to visit the first class in-flight lounge, where there was a 52-inch screen on the wall in the commons area with seating for 10, including 2 restrooms. He loved flying this airline for international trips, specifically this plane. It had the comfort of home in a weird sort of way. The furnishings were slick, sexy, and functional. The common area in flight looked like a pimped-out living room in the sky. Caramel-colored Italian leather seating, high-end artwork dressed the walls, and a handmade rug from Turkey covered the center of the floor. This area was exclusively reserved for first class and optimum business class passengers. Several deals have been made in this area at 45,000 feet. He'd even made a few. A few years back, he remembered fucking right in the right corner seat by the window without being discovered. That was a night to remember. They were vacationing to Italy for the very first time. He suggested that she wear the silk colorful skirt with no panties while they traveled. He wanted easy access to her pussy. He loved the way her skirt flowed around her legs and moved in the wind. He could smell her perfumed body with each flutter of the fabric. She always intoxicated him with her scent. With the thought of her smell, he could feel himself beginning to bulge with desire. He took a few slow, deep breaths to get his body under control. A smile came upon his face as he recalled her first travel experience on this particular plane, and he wanted to show her around. She was totally clueless what he wanted to do to her at 45,000 feet in the air. He intended to introduce her to the Mile High Club. The timing was the perfect opportunity. The majority of the passengers in their seating area were asleep. There were only a few flight attendants wandering through the aircraft answering call bells. When they entered the luxury reserved area, he watched her eyes light up and smile. He ushered her with his arms around her waist more into the room in order to close a double partition behind them. The room was dimly lit, and soft jazz played quietly through the hidden sound system. He directed her to a seat by the window, where he lifted her legs to place the ottoman underneath them. While slipping off her shoes, he slowly moved his hand up her soft inner thigh, where the tips of his fingers grazed the outer lips of her silky pussy. She took in a deep breath, while looking into his eyes, amazed and feeling the warmth rising between her legs. As he moved closer to her lips, she anticipated his lips touching hers, but instead, he asked her what she wanted to drink. This memory made him chuckle out loud, remembering the look on her face. She was ready and willing for whatever he planned for them. One of the things he loved about their relationships was her sexual appetite and her love for adventure. The chemistry between them is always fiery, lusty, and spontaneous. Standing in the very place where they had their first and only in-flight liaison, his mind drifted with a smile on his face. He could see her watching every move he made as he poured their drinks while smiling at her secretly, knowing what she wanted. Hell, he wanted it too. But he knew the more he delayed his attack, the wetter she became, which prevented him from working too hard, seeing they were in a public place and risked getting caught. He pretended as if this was a casual time for them to have some space and uninterrupted intimacy. He watched her watching him as he brought their drinks. He could see and feel her desire as her hand grabbed his crotch. She smiled, knowing he was holding back, but her hands told him a different story. He was rock hard with desire. He leaned into her while placing their drinks on the credenza, whispering, "You want this dick, don't you?" as he flicked his tongue on the lobe of her ear. She began massaging the center of his pants with her hand and hot mouth as his dick grew harder, aching to be free and aching to be inside of her. She slid her hand past the string lounge pant he wore and began sliding her hand up and down upon his shaft. He sucked in the air as her finger gazed the head of his member. As she stroked him into oblivion, he placed his hand inside her partly open yellow blouse, caressing her black lace-enclosed nipple with wet-dipped fingers of cognac. He could feel her nipples harden with his stroking and circling fingers. Her hips wreathed into the air, enticing him to place his free hand between her legs, while he could feel the dew slipping from her and sliding from her inner lips. She opened her legs wider as the fabric of her skirt gave way to more easy access to her pussy. He slowly moved his hands into her inner thighs and began flicking her clit and right nipple with his fingers in unison while she stroked him faster and firmer with her hand. She tried stifling her moans as she felt the first wave of orgasmic bliss rising from her toes to the ends of her hair. She felt her pussy juicing washing his 2 fingers as he slid inside her, and then inserting a 3rd finger as he began thrusting into her pussy, deliberately tickling her G-spot until she gushed on his hands. To listen to the remaining Sexpert series and this particular story, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/sexperts, and you'll see the membership there. And we really want you to know that we appreciate you listening to Sexperts Bedtime Stories for Couples.